Okay, let's continue our cost, volume, profit, and contribution margin discussion. And I'm a visual learner, you might be as well. So let's take a look at a graph. And we graph this, we can maybe see a better picture of what's going on. So we've got a scenario here on the chart that says that racing bicycles has contribution margin at different points here, 0, 200, 400, and 600 units sold. At 0, obviously we have no variable costs, so our total cost would be negative 80,000. If we have 200 units, we'd lose 40. 400 units we know is break even, and at 600 units we would make $40,000. So we simply have taken different units and applied our contribution margin to it, or we could have just applied our contribution margin to it as a simple way to decide how much profitability we would have. And once we have that, we can start to graph it. So the contribution margin graph is usually volume along the horizontal axis and dollars on the vertical axis. So volume across the bottom and dollars up the side. And so the first thing we can put in there, of course, is our fixed costs, which in this case is $80,000. And so we have $80,000, which is going to be a flat line because they're fixed. They're not going up by the number of units. Now, if it was going up by the number of units, it'd be a variable cost. Now it would go on here as well. But our variable costs, we want to add that to our fixed costs to throw a line in that's total costs. So when we do that, we have our total costs here, you can see, are the fixed costs plus the variable costs on top of that. So that's our total cost line. And this would be for all the units across the bottom, so 100, 200, 300, 400, and so on. So we've got total costs shown there. And then the third line, adding the third line here, was sales. So sales would show you a unit-dollar relationship. We know that the easy part of sales is to say break even is 400. So 400 would be the cross between sales and the dollars. So we know 400 would be at $0 above the total expenses. And so we have expenses and sales. 400 should be exactly the same point. And then over that, we know that we're making more money than that, and so on. So we just graph the sales line on top of it. But you can see the gap in between the expenses and the sales is your profit. So if we take the 400 at $200,000 number for the break even, and that's 1 point. And then if you go just to the left of it, you'll see that at 500 bikes, well, 500 bikes, our sales number for 500 bikes at $500 is $250,000. So you just go from 200,000 up to 250, and you go from 400 units to 500 units. You can plot the sales line very easily as well. And so you've got a sales line there, and the distance between the sales line and the expense line is your profit. So you can see that anything over $400 we make small profit, and the more over, the more profit we'll make. But of course, less than 400, we start losing money, and we lose money until we get all the way down to 0, which means we have no sales, and at 0 we are $80,000 in costs that we don't have, that we need to make up. So that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it, here's the break-even area. This is even a better chart. The break-even area is the profit area above your expense line on the left of break-even, or on the right of break-even. On the left of break-even, it's a loss area. So that was what I was explaining earlier. And let's go one more slide through and prepare a cost, value, and profit graph for profitability. So in this case, we change the horizontal axis. We still have the number of bicycles sold at the bottom, but the horizontal axis changes to a 0 point. And we just graph the profit here. So we know at 0 we're at 400 bikes, and if we use our formula, profit equals unit contribution margin times Q, or the number of units minus fixed costs, we can graph other points too. So we know that at 500 bikes, for example, we're going to make $20,000. So break evens is 0, and 500 bikes is $20,000. We can draw this line. If we have 100 bikes less, we know we'll lose $20,000, so we can put that point on the graph as well. And now we have a line there that can show us visually how much money or profit we're making or losing depending on how many bicycles we have. So even if you don't want to keep all these numbers in your head and they kind of get a little strange, you could draw this graph. It's very simple. You just plug in the numbers and draw straight lines, and all of a sudden you could say, oh, okay, I see where I'm at. I need to be over here to be profitable. Further up and to the right we go, the better off we are. And so that's what we're going to try to do. And so when you graph it this way visually, I think the numbers might be easier to see. Although once you get used to it, you don't need the graph anymore. So I'm not sure everybody will be doing this because it is pretty simple to just realize that it's $200 a bike and I need to go sell some bikes. So again, this is why managerial accounting is so important. Once you've figured out that number, it's very easy to manage the operations and know exactly where you're going to be at the end of the month. So that's the advantage of managerial accounting and why we would do things like this to tie it back into the difference between managerial and financial accounting. Okay, let's keep going on this in the next video.